It is now my absolute pleasure to introduce Tonya Fleming, the Manager of Private Markets and Innovation at the ASC, to the stage. She will be moderating our conversation about industry innovation in Alberta. And I will leave it to you, Tonya, to introduce your fabulous panel.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm going to actually let my fabulous panel introduce themselves. But first of all, yes, I'm Tonya Fleming, and I lead our private markets and innovation team in Alberta. And to Stan's comment this morning about innovation versus experience, I would have to say the innovation economy is awfully fun because there are lots and lots of young people. And if you think back to when you were younger, you might have been a little more fun, than you are now. But we have a very experienced panel, all people who are key parts of what we call the innovation ecosystem. And I'm going to turn it over to them to briefly introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Terry Rock. I'm the CEO of Platform Calgary, innovation hub across from the Calgary Public Library downtown, big parking structure. The first 2 floors are an innovation hub, 55,000 square feet. In a given year, we will work with over 700 entrepreneurs. Our goal is to make Calgary the best place in the world for anyone to start a tech company.
Yeah. So my name's Natasha Kostenuk, and is my mic on? I can't hear it. Okay. My name's Natasha Kostenuk, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Ayrton Energy. So my background is I'm a mechanical engineer, and I worked in oil and gas here in Calgary for 19 years in a variety of different roles: engineering, project management, technical sales, business development, etc. before leaving and escaping, and I kind of call it, and turning into the startup space. And so working alongside Platform and a couple other people in the ecosystem, helping other early stage tech companies before founding Ayrton. And Ayrton Energy is developing hydrogen storage technology. So most people are pretty excited about the sexier parts of hydrogen production, and hydrogen end use. But the bottleneck to broader hydrogen adoption is the challenges with storage and transportation. Typically, hydrogen is stored in very high pressures or very cold temperatures, which require complex equipment, safety handling. Oh, okay. Is that better? Can you guys hear me? Still not on. Can you guys hear me now? Okay. So hopefully you heard some of that. I'll just say that Ayrton's developing hydrogen storage technology. So instead of using high pressure, low temperature infrastructure, what we're developing is a liquid organic hydrogen carrier, which enables us to store and transport hydrogen as a room temperature, room pressure liquid that can utilize the same infrastructure that we use today for liquid fuels, tanks, trucks, pipelines, and rail cars with no modifications, which would really unlock hydrogen. So that's a quick background on myself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lawrence Korngut. I'm a neurologist here in Calgary. I work at the University of Calgary and lead innovation commercialization at the Hotchkiss Brain Institute, which is a leading neuroscience institute across Canada. As we'll talk about, we're very passionate about that whole spectrum of clinical care into discovery research, and more recently into innovation and commercialization of our technologies. And I'm also an entrepreneur involved in a couple of companies that I founded.
That's good. I think now we'll turn to our Slido poll, which is really a question about what is the innovation ecosystem? What does that mean? What are the organizations that are involved? I think there's a code on your table in order to access that Slido pool. Oh, Terry, you could be in trouble.
I know.
Platform Calgary. Exactly. Can we do it? Can we vote?
That's good. Made her. Cool.
Oh, there we go. There you go, Terry.
Okay. You'll all get your $20 later.
Actually, right now it's looking like the largest. I want to get my vote in.
Did you put ASC?
Very small. Where is it? I need someone else to put in ASC. Okay, so when we talk about the innovation ecosystem in Alberta, we have all kinds of organizations that are involved in this. And I want to actually start with Terry, and I'm going to take you back a number of years when you gave a TED Talk. Do you remember this? A while ago.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And you talked about creating a purpose-driven city.
Yeah.
Now,
That's the flashback.
It is
Yes.
a flashback, yeah, and it was before Platform Calgary. It wasn't even in the ideation stage then, it was before. But when you think about what Platform Calgary is doing and that theme of creating a purpose-driven city and our innovation economy, think of some of those themes and how does that relate to what you're doing today or what Platform's doing today?
Ooh, wow. I mean, so this is super deep. Wow. Good start. Think about this city that we are in right now. It is objectively one of the best places to live in the world on all kinds of measures. And at the time I was doing that, I was the CEO of Calgary Arts Development Authority, and we were trying to figure out what's the purpose of the arts in our city. And can you have a great city without that kind of a thing? And ultimately, I think I'll go now in that you can look at a sort of core economy part of the city. You can look at the education system and those kinds of things. There's a leg of the stool at the time that I thought was the arts, but I actually think it's the creative engine of the city.
Yeah.
Where you build things. And so when I say we want Calgary to be the best place in the world for anyone to start and grow a tech company, I was having dinner with or lunch with one of our donors yesterday, and he translated that into we want Calgary to be the best place for young people with big ideas. And the purpose-driven side of it was, a place to live isn't just a place to get rich.
Right.
A place to live has to have more than that. And then you think about the unique opportunity we have at this place in time and history. And Calgary could be a city where the sustainable energy challenges are solved by people like Natasha, where major health advances are solved by people like Lawrence. And so what does it take then to take all this potential, the wealth we have here, the smart people we have here, the big industry problems we have here, and turn that into something that truly does change the world? And so that's kind of my link. And so what I do right now is I fundamentally believe that that's driven at the core by some kind of entrepreneurial activity, that you're unleashing the potential of entrepreneurs to rewire the world in ways that favor more people. That's what I think we're all about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of it is that building of community,
Yeah.
because it doesn't happen in isolation. And to be creative, when you are around other creative people who are actively trying to solve problems, I think it really brings out your creativity as well.
Well, so the platform community, our economy goes up and down, and it will always. Walk into Platform Calgary, every person there is trying to build something. They're optimistic. They believe they can tackle the challenges. And so we get to be surrounded by people like this that every day they're bringing in, like, I think I can solve a massive problem and build a business around it that's going to employ people and make a difference. So yeah, that's a fun community to be part of.
Yeah, and the U of C community as well, because you came out of the university, you're at the university, and that is very much a community also.
Well, I was just going to comment that it's amazing to have seen the growth in the last 5 years. Absolutely tremendous growth. And I've had the privilege to spend time in different hubs for ecosystems down in the Valley and in New York, and in a couple other, Boston and a couple other ecosystems. And Calgary's growing really fast and on the right path to be just as competitive as a bunch of those ecosystems for sure. And I think I just saw it either in PitchBook or our card, or one of those, was it PitchBook? That we were ranked second in Canada for attracting investment into startups, behind Toronto. And we were in the top 20, I think, for fastest growing in the world, if I remember right. So
That's right.
yeah, so Calgary's really, really growing. And I think what you said, it's a community. of really building things. And I think one of the Alberta advantages we have is the people and the mindset we have. I was just in Toronto yesterday and had this exact conversation with somebody where Albertans have this get her done kind of attitude. And it is really a key part of a successful startup, is just figuring out how to get it done, having a network, figuring out who to ask for help. And we have all those pieces here, which is what's making our ecosystem grow so much.
Yeah. And I know, Lawrence, you give time every week to students. You block off your calendar and you simply make yourself available for students who are looking for some guidance in how to bring their idea to reality.
Yeah, I think to echo what's being said already, I think the culture of Calgary has been very powerful for us as a neuroscience research institute, as a university. And what I mean very practically by this, because I don't think I appreciated it 7 years ago when I started in this role, leading innovation commercialization, but I think we ended up pursuing a culture change within our own institution where innovation and commercialization, in efforts to drive impact into the community, we realized we have to build value in those technologies. You can't just throw them out there. That doesn't work. And so what we did was we sort of pursued a culture shift around this. But really what we started to do more of was reflect our community in terms of that entrepreneurial spirit, in terms of the innovation that is happening in the city. It kind of normalized this, because remember, this is a bunch of academics and clinicians. We're not in our early 20s for the most part. Some of our trainees are, but this has been very powerful. And if you now look across the landscape across Canada, what other universities have done, what other institutes have done, they have not been able to keep up with us, how quickly we've been moving in this direction, because they put sort of programming ahead of culture. And so they put the programming in, they invested the money, but then the innovation didn't follow. And so I think it's recognized that culture shift, again, just kind of coming to the middle of where the community is at, has been very powerful. And when you destigmatize these kind of activities for researchers, suddenly you see all this output. And then we became a major company producer, over 40 companies now spinning out of Hotchkiss over the last 5 years, each with their unique technologies and that. But this has been very powerful, and I think I would have not appreciated this 7 years ago when I started to the point that I do now in terms of the power of that culture and the people.
Can I just jump on that, because I need this room to understand that the University of Calgary is an outlier in this. We spent a lot of time benchmarking, looking across Canada, and I think it starts with the belief that is being built there, that it isn't good enough to discover something if it isn't put into practice. Then there's almost like an ethical problem there, and that you've figured it out, and the people that are attracted to the University of Calgary are attracted to not just discovering things, but to getting them out into the market, into being used in commercial applications typically. And I'll go back to having a leader like Lawrence there, where entrepreneurship is one of the preferred vehicles to make it happen, which also needs capital and which also needs company building capacity and those kinds of things to scale it. I've hosted people from across Canada here, and they are envious of what we've got going on here, just because we've made the statement that that's important and we're building it into the beliefs of what it means to be a professor. That's just a culture change. Maybe Waterloo is the only other place in Canada that has that right now at that level.
I suspect you've lived that, Natasha, because you were an engineering student at the U of C, and that was where Ayrton really started and took place.
It kind of wasn't, actually.
No?
That's probably not my story there, but because I graduated 20 some years ago, so it wasn't really on my radar to do that. So Ayrton's not a spin out from the university, but so many good companies in Calgary are. I do agree with Terry that the university has a real good mindset and a culture and a community that they're building that is helping the students there think about not just thinking of something cool because it's cool, but developing something that the world really needs and can buy and can use, which is critical and more important. And a quick shout out to the UCEED, because I don't think there's that many other universities that have a strong investor platform like the university does with their UCEED program that also then supports those entrepreneurs with funding.
Yeah. I wanted to do another audience engagement question. I think we have a poll, and it's about the role of an accelerator. And then I'll ask Terry first to talk a little bit about what you see accelerators doing, how they are actually helping some of these really fabulous ideas get off the ground.
Yeah.
If we could get that up on the screen.
Oh, this is so interesting.
I love to see the numbers changing and people changing their mind, because that's okay too.
You're not guaranteeing success, Terry.
No?
I'm so disappointed.
I know.
We don't. Some do. Do you want me to jump into it now?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, okay, so I actually am also an academic by training, and I come at this sort of very much looking at it from a framework. And one of that was actually one of the very first things we looked at is like, is Platform Calgary an incubator? Is it an accelerator? We actually think of ourselves as an ecosystem accelerator as opposed to a startup accelerator, although we do have startup accelerator programs. I think, in fact, I look at the world this way. An accelerator can break down into two pieces. One, it's almost like an academy. So accelerators typically will have some kind of a curriculum or some kind of a content base that they want you to connect with. There are other ones that are simply about making connections to industry and putting you into the context of how industry makes decisions. So that's how, and at the end of the day, there's kind of two things you can accelerate. One is your knowledge of how it works to build a business generally, but also in this sector. And the second is you can make connections that you couldn't make yourself way faster. One of our core value propositions at Platform is take 3 months of looking around the community for help, condense that to a day or a week. If we do that consistently for people, Calgary will be way better off. So that's one thing. That's effectively the way I look at an accelerator program. The other key dimension is whether or not there's an equity component to them or not.
Right.
Some of them will take equity simply for providing you that connectivity service. Some of them, so they'll invest in you, and then some of them, there's kind of a standard term sheet now that comes in with for accelerators that's anywhere from $150,000 to $250,000 US dollars for something like 7% to 10% equity, which, depending on what you're building, can be a big price for an early stage company. And the other thing would be timelines. Some of them can be, a few months. Some of them can be just a small period of time. I'll just complement that. You might hear the term incubator. I think of incubators focused more on purely mentorship and connectivity, focused on helping you get to your business milestones, whatever those might be. There's less likely to be a particular curriculum or content piece that they want you to go through. It's very much more about giving you time and space and connections and mentorship. And that's how we have a platform incubator, and it's built strictly on the companies coming together, mentoring each other, being surrounded by other mentors. And then what is the most important milestone for you to hit right now to be a viable growing business? And let's put all of our effort on making that happen.
Yeah. So Natasha, I think Ayrton participated in an accelerator, and I mean, there are so many resources out there. How do you, as a co-founder of a business, how do you make a decision on which accelerator to participate in, which resources to access?
Yeah, for sure, because there are many, and we've probably done a handful, 4 or 5, I think, in the last 2 years. And I would say big part of it is the ecosystem and the people they're pulling together. Some of it is the mentors, but some of it is the peer-to-peer. It's really great to hear about somebody who did that before, and there's some value to that, but it's kind of like asking a parent of a teenager what it's like to go through teething, because they kind of remember, but they don't really remember. Yeah. And so it's also good to have a really strong peer-to-peer network, so finding somebody who's in the trenches with you, I think is really strong for something we look at. We also have looked really hard at the resources that they have offered. We've participated in a couple of programs where they've been really hands-on. An example I'll give is our first prototype that we built here in Calgary. We used a local engineering firm, and it cost us $5,000 to build something the size of this water bottle. And then this program out of New York helped us build the next iterations of those prototypes for $200 to $300 each. The first one took us about 8 weeks to build, and they got us prototypes in 2 to 3 weeks. And so that acceleration of tech development was crucial to our success. And I know that that's coming in bits and pieces here in Calgary, depending on kind of your type of company that you're developing. Those resources, a BioX Hub, I think, is one that has some staff in the university. At the Life Science Innovation Hub has some programs that are, and some hands-on support. So we would love to see that continue to grow here. Yeah, that's kind of some of the key things. The other one is really topic focused. Like, we're currently in an accelerator based in Texas that's based in hydrogen. So companies from all over the world that want to establish a business in hydrogen in Texas. So something that's very, very focused is also a good benefit.
Yeah. Do you want to talk, Lawrence, do you want to talk about what's going on at the U of C in terms of resources and support?
Well, what I would say is our science, the university is a bit unique in some ways when it comes to entrepreneurship or commercialization, because our entrepreneurs tend to be older, so they're starting companies in their late 30s, 40s, 50s, even 60s. They're often the world expert in what they're doing, but they have no idea how to build a company in most of the situations. And so having local resources like Platform Calgary, Creative Destruction Lab, these are essential opportunities for our scientists to start building early teams, get involved. The UC program in terms of obtaining early funding for those companies. But that kind of offsets the global pull for our technologies to move somewhere else. Because of course, nobody wants that. I would say the vast majority of our scientists, they want to build here and make impact on our local community first and foremost. And so these accelerators are amazing opportunities to plug in, on a local level. At the university, we do have specific programming and support for them as well. But I would say, the more of these opportunities there are, the better they can fit with what that individual needs for their technology. The journey of these companies, these innovations is so unique. Everyone is different, to find the mentors. And so Platform's been amazing. CDL, again, the UC program and other Alberta Innovates has some support as well, particularly financial. And so these are really essential to get our folks going, because they don't know the business elements usually of how to do this. Yeah.
Should we talk about what CDL is and some of those?
Yeah, please, yeah.
I mean, I think so. Creative Destruction Labs is a really good example of a unique kind of accelerator program that focuses on deep technology that's basically technology that can have massive scale when it's fully developed, and it brings together, curates a group of mostly people that can write checks, but also people who have deep industry experience. And through a period of time, the companies are showcased, and then somebody in the room has to say, I believe in this company, for them to stay in the program. And then they will spend time mentoring those people. And then it comes back, and then the next time they meet, somebody has to put their hand up and say, I'm going to continue to support this company, which typically means I'll write a check to them. It could also mean, I think I might write a check to them. It could also mean I'm going to make an introduction to them, or I'm going to coach them, and they need to be coachable. And what I love about our city, again, is that the CDL chapter here, started at University of Toronto, has been one of the most successful in the whole CDL network. And it was also the place where they went from, we should do this, to it's happening fastest. Right. Because it took community support and financial support to make it happen. And Calgary rose to the occasion effectively, instantly, to make it happen. That's the Calgary story. That's our superpower. That, going back to collaboration and community. Yeah. We just need to keep doing more and more of that and realize it is a differentiator for us. Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
And having someone in the room that says, I'm willing to step up and support this company, whether it's financial, which every small company needs, that's critical for growth, but also that mentorship. Introductions, everyone is always willing to do it. There is never anyone who says, no, no.
Yeah.
I won't introduce you to it. Calgary just doesn't gatekeep in that way. In my experience, Alberta doesn't gatekeep in that way. There's always introductions to be made. And again, that's just so important for small business because you're looking for customers, you're looking for investors. I wanted to turn next to that question of capital because you cannot grow if you can bootstrap for a while, but at the end of the day, you need capital to grow. And Natasha, do you want to talk about what that journey looked like for you?
Yeah, so so the capital comes from different parts. So there's dilutive and non-dilutive. And so what first got us started is the non-dilutive. And our very first grant we got was from NRC IRAP, which is a federal program. I noticed it didn't make it on the list up there, but just to put it on people's radar, it's NRC IRAP, and it's like Alberta Innovates, but on the federal side. We've gotten quite a bit of funding from them over the last 3 years, as well as Alberta Innovates, and as well as a few other programs. And next generation manufacturing called NGen has given us quite a bit, and a couple other programs like that. So I think we've collected about $4 to $4.5 million in non-dilutive capital in the last 2 years. And then we did our first fundraise in March of 2023, where we raised about $1 million US. Led by a New York investor, followed on by a deep network of individuals and small investment groups here in Alberta. And so we're well supported by our local community. And then we've also just recently closed a $6.8 million US round led by BDC Capital and Clean Energy Ventures out of Boston, and 2 other investors out of Asia, and follow-ons with our New York investor and other local Albertans here. And so it hasn't been an easy journey. Fundraising is definitely hard. And the ecosystem in Canada is probably still maturing on the finance side. So there's not as many investors, especially you have to kind of find your tribe. We're doing, deep tech hardware. It's not something that's going to be commercial from the lab out in 12 to 18 months. It's going to take us 3 to 5 years before we're really ready to go commercial. And so there's a different type of investor to do that. And so that's kind of been our journey.
Yeah. How did you attract that global capital? And then within your local Alberta network, who were some of the big supporters of you?
Yeah, so the CDL network, some people on CDL network are definitely some supporters of ours. And it was just really kind of finding the people in my network of those high net worth individuals that have been supporting me in my career, that some of them have been mentors of mine over the last 20 years that not only leaned in to help me, but then wrote a check when I needed it. So that was a big part of our support. And then we're one of the companies, we were the first investment from USEED's New Energy Fund that opened last year. And we also are supported by the 51. So the 51 is a female-led organization that invests in female-led companies. And so that's some of our local support. And then finding the international support was really just, it's just not easy, but you kind of have to hit the streets and just kind of get as many introductions as you can and have as many meetings as you can. I have a CRM system, and I tracked between 120 and 130 investors that we talked to for our last raise to get the 5 that invested in our cap table. So it's a journey. But yeah, having just the network, I guess. And it leads from those accelerator programs and these peer-to-peer. Some of the introductions I got came from other CEO founders. I just want to double click on something that Terry said about building the ecosystem and what platform does. When he says that you should show up there and see what it looks like when you're there, it's exactly what the good accelerators are, is it's on site. It's in person, because if there's an energy and a environment that doesn't get created if you're just meeting once a week on Zoom.
And Lawrence, how about you? I mean, you have a company that's right now operating in 18 countries.
Yeah, so it's interesting because in health means a lot of different things, a lot of different technologies. So we have digital companies that can move things fairly quickly, can actually bootstrap. Our company, Lumio, bootstrap. We never brought on investors, but the vast majority, 95%, do need venture backing. So if you're developing the next drug for a given disease, these are very capital intensive efforts. And I think part of our challenge has been a bit of lack of understanding or awareness of what health science investing looks like and what the risks really are, because the risks are understood really well. The probability of taking a drug from preclinical into phase 1 and out to the market, we know those numbers really, really well. And in most cases, it's more attractive than people would think. People think it's like a 1 in 1,000 shot that a drug will make it all the way through this process. So part of it is us being able to educate the community. And part of it is that there has been a revolution in neuroscience in terms of therapies being developed. Great examples, Alzheimer's. We think of Alzheimer's as this massive burden on our society. Many in the room are probably affected through family members or loved ones otherwise. What you may not know is there's 3 disease-modifying therapies approved by the FDA in the US in the last 18 months. They're just taking their time getting to Canada. So this hasn't hit our consciousness yet in terms of what is happening. And so it makes it more difficult to raise capital locally. So our companies tend to start locally. They'll go through CDL, they'll go through other programs. Alberta Innovates, again, has been a tremendous supporter of some of that early capital. Our UC program, we have UC Neuro specific now to fund some of these companies. But then you have to go external. You do have to go to Boston, Basel, Palo Alto, the South San Francisco type of investors to also validate kind of what you're doing, but at the same time bring in, and some of these raises can be anywhere from 10 million to 50 million to 100 million, fairly early because drug development is costly. But there's other diagnostic tests that are spinning out of the university, whether in neuro or in other areas, that are finding tremendous local support with investors. And so it's complex. And I think part of the reason I'm pleased to be here is just to kind of mention what's happening, have people look at it a little bit closer. And it's not all about investment, also just about general awareness, support, contribution to what is happening, because it is an exciting time. But our companies are getting through Series A. They're building forward. It's all still pretty new as a technology in Calgary.
Do you want to give some examples of some of the medical problems that you're solving right now?
A great example that some of you may be familiar with is a company called Fluid Biomed out of Hotchkiss. 2 neurosurgeons from our department founded this company. They're neurovascular surgeons. So if you have an aneurysm, so this is a weakness of or outpouching of an artery in the brain, and it ruptures and can cause death or often in cases quite a bit of disability. So we can treat these ahead of time through endovascular. So they put a catheter up through an artery in the groin and kind of seal off the aneurysm. The problem with those treatments is they're all metallic. And so you end up putting a stent in or a clip, and then it's there forever. And so that is the standard of care. They have a completely novel approach to this, which dissolves over time. So it treats the aneurysm, and then it's essentially gone, which then allows you to do an MRI later on, because you can't image that part of the brain again with an MRI, for example. And this is a huge global burden of disease. Huge market, of course, because of the potential impact. And they're just nearly closing, I think, is the language of their Series A round right now. And they've gone through some early human studies. The data is looking amazing. So we're very proud of Fluid Biomed. But that's a great example that within a number of years, this could well be on the market in terms of the technology treating patients all over the world, from a Calgary-based innovation, Calgary-based company, and a very passionate group of contributors to our community.
And how do people find out about these kind of opportunities? Like, Platform does, I think, a very nice job of making some introductions, but how do people find out about these? I mean, that's amazing, right? And for a lot of people here, they're probably hearing about it for the very first time. How do you learn about this?
I'll put a plug in for a local conference called Adventures. And so when I first left oil and gas, I had been to tons of big conferences in Houston and SPE conferences all over the world. And I went to this Adventures conference for a local Alberta-based startups. And I was expecting a room this size and, a couple of speakers. And it blew my mind how large that conference is. And it's only gotten larger in the 5 years since my first time. And it's held in the spring, and it's run with Alberta Innovates, and I think Platform's a big part of it now.
We will be.
Will be, okay. But anyways, that's one place where if you're interested, it's a good way to see a bunch of different types of technology, a bunch of different startups, meet a bunch of different parts of the ecosystem, and it's a couple-day conference, and so that's one kind of plug I'll put out there.
I'm going to just step back for 1 second. Every city in the world that is doing what we're doing, We are one of the fastest growing communities for this in North America, in the world, therefore. When you talk about PitchBook had us, we're 61st in globally for this market, second in Canada on venture, particularly the venture class. We weren't in the universe 5 years ago for them. We were on any radar. We are in the top 50 emerging cities globally, according to Startup Genome, which puts us top 100 globally on a more broad-based assessment of ecosystem. Again, 5 years ago, we were not even considered.
So what happened?
Well,
what
so
happened?
what's interesting about that is, so we've had a surge. It's really something that's been going for 25 plus years, and Calgary it's a flywheel, and we're on the third or fourth turn of the flywheel. So a company like Solium built up and is acquired, and then those people go into the community and start again, and that's something that you can't really engineer that, but a number of people, Brad Zumwalt built 4 companies. He supported the early stages of the platform and continued to build companies. And so you just build, over time, it's an asset base that built up. What we have right now is a situation where we have more companies being started than we have experienced investors that know how to invest in them.
Right.
Because it's different to invest in a cash flowing business or real estate or oil and gas where you understand the mechanics of how it works compared to a drug company that's going to take years to maybe get on the market and be commercial, but yet requires capital all along. And that's just a different way, it's a different profile of how a return is generated. Hardware companies are similar, but they're understandable, and there are ways of creating models to understand how these work and then assess and basically create a risk profile and make an informed investment as part of a portfolio. So when we were building platform, I'm telling you, every city in the world that is kind of in this situation has the same problem, and they all complain about it. Early stage capital, how do we get investors? This is a huge opportunity for Calgary because we actually have people who are entrepreneurial minded, who have capital, who want to get behind their local businesses. And we can actually tilt the playing field so that our local companies, so that starting here is an advantage. So we decided to build something called the National Bank Investor Hub. National Bank came on for a 4-year sponsorship. It has a few goals. One of them is to help people who are interested in the tech asset class get connected in to fellow investors who've done it before, but also meet people like this before they even have something that's investable, but to get to know them and what they're working on, because you can be a help right from there. Second thing, we have probably once a week, we have a fund from outside of Calgary. We're now on the map. They're calling saying, what's going on in your city? And they'll come and we'll actually curate a day for them where we'll meet whoever they're interested in. We have investor education programs with a number of partners. So what does it look like to be an angel investor, early stage investor? We can actually put those together. We consider this to be core infrastructure because it's not a one-time thing. We always want people to start to learn how to invest in this asset class. And then the last thing we do is we run a lot of events. So on a monthly basis, we have an investor breakfast where we bring 3 startups to get in. They tell their story. It is not a pitch. Mm-hmm. They tell their story, and we have a conversation and we build those connections. That's the core of everything we do. So we're actually going to be offering an easier way for interested people to get involved in that in 2025. We've just started to staff it up. So I'm looking forward to that. It is actually an area that if we all as a community put our minds to it, this will be one of the key drivers of our continued growth.
Right.
I just want to highlight that Calgary does have that advantage, and we're attracting investors. So one of my investors is a family office out of Singapore. I think he's done 8 investments. 2 of them are here in Calgary, and out of his 8, and out of Singapore. Like, he's looking everywhere in the world, traveling everywhere in the world, and he's a quarter of his portfolio is based here in Calgary, and he believes our ecosystem is really strong, and there's huge opportunities for investment here. And so I just think we got to continue to spread the word so that our own local investors don't get scooped out of the opportunities in their own backyard.
That's happening too.
Yeah.
I think, we don't want it to be the best kept secret. Is that there's like these great people building great companies in your backyard and you could have invested in them. That shouldn't be a secret.
I also think, again, building community in the investor group is really important as well. And you mentioned the 51 earlier. 51 is an organization that's really focusing on women investing, and they do, I think, a very good job of building a community of investors and offering education along the way. Because one of the things that they found was that very talented and skilled women do not feel confident investing, and they feel like they need to have a lot more knowledge before they're actually prepared to make an investment. So what that organization is doing is they're building this community of women, providing education along the way, and also support. And of course, their focus is investing in female
And I'll just
companies.
highlight that, so that's called the 51, obviously, because 51% of the population is women. I think, I don't remember the exact percentage of women investors, you might know, Terry, but I think it's around 8 to 10% of investors are women. It's very small.
Yeah.
And the amount of women-led companies that get investment dollars is less than 2%. So out of all the women-led companies, all the investments that go to startups, only 2% go to women-led companies, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, so very, very small, and obviously a huge opportunity.
Yeah. Lawrence, you have 2 daughters, and they are young entrepreneurs. Do you want to talk about the kind of support that has been available to them as they're starting their businesses?
Yeah, it's been, so I have 2 daughters. They're 14 and 16 years old. They run a company called Small Bits of Happiness, which creates products to help moms typically connect with their teen daughters. And there's sort of tools around finding happiness. They have a popular podcast, and they're very active. I think their products are in about 70 stores across Canada and the US now. But what's interesting about it is when I look at it from my own lens as an entrepreneur, it just further solidifies how incredibly accessible and supportive this community is. Because certainly that was our experience when I started our company Lumio 7 years ago now. I had no idea what to do, who to talk to, where to go, other than I knew I had to disclose it to my work environment, which of course we did. But then slowly everything opened up and revealed itself. Our Lumio now is a proud member at Platform Calgary. But our daughters have found the same experience. They went through the Founder Lab at the 51. They found tremendous sort of moral support, but also kind of knowledge and network support. And they did internships at Creative Destruction Lab to learn more and kind of soak up that environment. It's incredible. It really is not an age factor in Calgary, and I think that's really important. And I think the mission also matters. In terms of anybody here who's interested in getting involved in this innovation work, maybe more so. I think there's different ways to do that. Investment is one way, but there's knowledge that's required. There's expertise, whether it's regulatory, whether it's accounting, whether it's legal. And I think that, missions can line up. And for our daughters, it's of course, helping elevate the happiness level of teenagers. But there's lots of, whether it's hydrogen storage or whether it's, climate or neuroscience. I ran our ALS clinic for a decade. So ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, affects a good number of people. So some people are passionate about that. And I think the answer is just reach out. If you reach out to Platform, they'll connect to us. If you reach out to us, we'll connect to these guys. And so it is people know each other quite well, I would say, and that's a huge strength.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to mention that you can ask questions via the Slido app, but also there are sheets of paper on your table if you prefer the old-fashioned way of writing your question out with a pen, and then just raise your hand and someone will come and pick it up from you. We'll do questions in about 5 minutes or so. Let's turn to Alberta's economy and diversification within the economy, and how is innovation playing into that? What sectors do you see really thriving here?
Well, the obvious one is energy.
Yes.
And there's a number of drivers of that. I saw Peter Tertzakian earlier, so I'm not going to go too deep into that with Peter in the room. But look, there's a global ranking of the Startup Genome put out of clean tech cities. Calgary is 30th on the list. It's top 30. We are 30th. And what's interesting about that is that the bulk of the score that we got was on potential, not on what's actually happening here right now. Although some of the biggest deals in the last year were actually in the clean tech space. The deal of the year at the Start Alberta Awards last week was a clean tech deal, and so that is obviously one where it's going to be billions and trillions of dollars that are going to be continued to spend on legacy, but also in energy transition and alternative forms of energy, and particular carbon, the carbon side. Avatar Innovations is a really interesting model of another one of these flavors of accelerators and incubators that is pulling people right out of energy companies, putting them to work on challenging energy problems, and then building companies around the ones that get some traction. That's really interesting. So I think that's one that is just obvious, and we should just completely lean into that and make sure that we are one of the cities in the world where if you want to solve those problems, come here. We're seeing, similar kind of situation in ag where it is clearly one of the areas where we have global players here. We are centered, our economy is very dependent on it and benefits from it, but there's so much more we could do on the innovation side. Yeah. The Olds College and their smart farm, and there's some additional work that's coming down the pipe to aggregate that in Calgary. But I would say we have to pay attention to that and watch it. Obviously, Lauren's going to talk about life sciences. You can probably talk better about clean tech than I can. We're also seeing a few areas of maybe surprising strength. So people are familiar with Neo Financial, but there's a whole ecosystem of fintechs that we ran for 2 years with Digital Commerce, a FinTech Award. We had 150 applications of people who building fintechs here. We do an annual prop tech showcase, so construction, property management, real estate. There's companies growing there. And then the other one that I think is really cool is gaming and entertainment.
Right.
We had during Innovation Week a couple weeks ago, we had a night, we had 20 studios showcasing the games that they were building here. Bow Valley College has just created an esports arena and a whole set of programs around that, which I'm old enough to maybe be right on the cusp of, okay, I guess that's a thing, but definitely my kids think it's amazing, and one of them might actually move back to Calgary because of that. So I think those are some that I've seen in my.
I'll add battery materials, battery metals. So there's a couple of really strong lithium extraction type technology companies and other battery material technology companies that are coming out of our space here to help us with our natural resources, because Alberta has all of the right resources to make this energy transition, right? We've got the people, the know-how, the equipment, the understanding, the infrastructure for everything like that. So that's another one that I think is heavily leading. And I'm going to pass it to Lawrence, but I'll say that some of the talk in Toronto and some of my broader ecosystem partners and peers are talking about healthcare and health tech in Calgary. And they told me they were surprised at how much there is out of that, and they're hearing the buzz about it in Toronto.
Yeah, and so in terms of the health component of the innovation scene, there's a great deal going on. It's very diverse in the sense that we see devices, digital tools, diagnostics, and drugs being developed out of Calgary. And we're also seeing this, neuro is probably the biggest component of that at the moment, but certainly we see cardiovascular, we see musculoskeletal, there's all sorts of devices and technologies being produced. And I think we benefit greatly from those successes in the communities, the Neo Financials, the other, whether it be fintech, clean energy, et cetera, because a lot of what we need is that expertise in how do you build a business, how do you structure things correctly, how do you do the accounting and the legal and the regulatory, and that knowledge, having a bit of a leaky ecosystem where people move between companies is pretty essential. I think that is the Silicon Valley success that occurred, previously, and I think we're emulating that in that way. But certainly, I think there's a lot of interest to kind of move between these sectors for some of the employees or the founders even.
Yeah, and not even just the employees going out into the ecosystem, but also as people retire, and they have tremendous skills. Like they're very, very experienced, and there's young entrepreneurs that have they're fantastic tech skills, but are missing some of that components of how do you actually run a business. And Intergen is an organization here in Calgary that makes that connection between people who have expertise to offer and entrepreneurs who are looking for it. And using a technology that looks sort of like a dating app, like it's a matching technology of here's what I have to offer, here's what I'm looking for, and do you match? And if so, will you help each other out?
That's we have now a coaching network.
Yeah.
That's over 100 coaches that are specialists in key areas, and they're just available for the community to tap into.